Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership and business from the inside out. And firstly, a big shout out to the listeners, a big hi and hello to everyone. Today we are welcoming to the show Eric Morris. Eric Morris, welcome.
Thank you, B, and thank you for having me on your show.
No, thank you. And you're like literally down the road from me. So we both live Bayside, locally here in Melbourne, Australia. It's so funny when I get to connect with someone that, you know, when we met the other week, you're like, I think you said you're in Brighton, I'm in Elwood, so we're not that far from each other.
Not at all.
No. And it's nice when it's summer here, but in the winter it can get extra fresh with the sea breeze and everything.
Especially today. Today's been pretty, and yesterday as well was pretty awful.
I know. Anywho, I'm really excited to talk to you because you have quite the story, quite the experience. You said to me when we spoke the other week, you've got lots of learnings for the listeners and for for the audience in terms of 18 years in a CEO role and everything else that you're doing now. So let's jump on into it, because I think that you can't underestimate experience, I think, as well. And there's new experience coming through the line with the younger generations. Then there's older people like yourself and I. I don't think we're old, though. I still consider myself young.
I like the word older, rather.
And I think there's this real interesting connection that is happening where there's this older experience and then there's this newer experience and then there's this intersection and then what becomes possible in that space. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing all your lessons, what you're still learning now, and all of that. So let's get into it. You are non-executive director, chair, and a former CEO. And Eric, you've spent more than 3 decades exploring a question every leader eventually faces, and that is, how do you lead through constant change without losing who you are? Oh my gosh, I know that one well. After 18 years as a CEO leading retail and consumer businesses through growth, disruption, private equity, digital transformation, and an ASX listing, an important inflection point emerged for you, Eric, and that was that you realised that authentic leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about creating trust, clarity, and confidence when the path ahead is uncertain. Today, as a non-executive director, chair, and advisor, and I think you said you're on the board member of
4 different boards.
Yeah.
2 as chair and
wow,
2 as lead.
Fascinating. You help boards and leadership teams navigate complexity while building organisations that are ready for what's next. And so your journey reflects a shift from leading transformation to helping leaders transform themselves. And at the heart of your work sits a simple question, that is, what becomes possible when authenticity becomes your greatest leadership advantage? Tell us, let's go right back. Tell us, 18 years in as a CEO, it's a great stint. And it's not for the faint-hearted being a CEO. There's so much that goes with being a CEO. I think everyone thinks CEO, wow, amazing. And yet there's so much that...
It's a tough gig and you're always learning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But if I actually want to take it right back, it goes back to 2005, where I was approached to start a private equity-led business which focused on a roll-up in the apparel sector. It's a very fragmented sector. The private equity guys had an idea to do a roll-up and create a business out of it. It started with a whiteboard and really just looking at what business we should acquire and what we should be doing. And I really could put the journey into 3 distinct stages. The first stage was really going and acquiring businesses it was generally from aging owners who didn't have a succession plan in their business. And we did numerous acquisitions. Over the years, I've probably done about 12 to 14 of them. But the early days, went out, bought these businesses. Second stage was integration, and third stage was growth. It culminated in 2014. A normal private equity play is 3 to 5 years. The GFC got in the way, and it ended up being much longer than that. We listed on the ASX in 2014, which was an experience in itself. But also just, if I look back on those early years, the first thought was we'll buy a majority share in the business, it was 70 or 80% of a business, and leave the owner in for a period of time. We did change that after a period of time, and realizing once you'd given an owner a nice big fat check, and they've always run the business the way they liked running a business, and it was always going to be very difficult to try and change because there was always going to be a level of pushback. We changed that after time, and we ended up buying 100% of the businesses. So from 2014 we listed. We went through until 2020, effectively, when COVID, to 2019 and 2020. A little bit of a challenge with COVID, all stores being closed, everything went south. We ended up going private. We ended up merging two businesses together, which was originally the PAS Group, which is the business we founded, and Brand Collective, which was another business. We merged the two, and I ran that for another couple of years as a merged business, and it's just on 3 years now where I had stepped away and started a non-executive career, an advisory business. So
Fascinating.
in a nutshell, that's the background, and you can imagine with all of those, that length of time across so many different types of businesses, integrations, etc., mergers, there was quite a few learnings along the way.
Yeah, what was your biggest learning? Like, what do you think was the biggest learning, like consistent, like learning along the way in terms of, was there a theme that you noticed?
There's probably a few. I could probably break it down to 5 or 6 different key learnings along the way. But probably the biggest one is really to go with your gut on decisions. It might sound a little corny, but after a period of time, I found that your initial gut feel is absolutely right. Whether it's about any business-related element, any people-related issues that you have. And my view is always that if your original gut feel, and let's talk about people, for example, is that somebody's not quite right for the job, it's generally best to change it then and not to wait, because the amount of times I've seen, not only through my 18 years as CEO, but through other times as well, where you've seen significant turnaround in performance, it very seldom happens. So number one would probably be just to go with your gut. I think the other one is around never being complacent. And complacency, and I see that so often in businesses who've been around for a long period of time, always wanting to do things the way they used to do them. And the world changes.
Yeah, I agree.
And complacency can be very, very dangerous. So continuous innovation is really important. There's the old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, if it's not broke, assess it, because it may become broken.
Like that. If it's not broke, assess it. Yeah,
assess it, and you may need to tweak it so that you don't have to wait for it to break before you change it. And I think a continuous improvement scenario is absolutely critical. Particularly an industry which I've been involved in, which is obviously retail. It initially started as apparel, but it turned out to apparel, sport, and a whole lot of other different segments. But it's changed so much, particularly in the last 10 years. Growth of online shopping, new international entrants, all other things that have been going on. And one's got to continuously look at everything and work out how best it needs to move on.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with even AI coming into play, like consumer behavior, even when you go through things like the GFC and everything else, consumer sentiment, even how do you get people to purchase your product, all of that, because there's just so many facets to retail, isn't there?
Yes, totally. So I think that's one of the important ones. If I think through again, another one would be the amount of times I heard through our own organisation, which we ended up changing the way we looked at it, but through major customers, through everything, where people say, I don't have any budget for something. Well, if you actually think about it, a budget is just your best estimate that you have at any point in time,
Yeah.
a financial year or whatever it is. And how that actually inhibits a business, because you should always have budget if there's a return on the investment. So, that was a big learning as well, saying, I obviously say to the team, there's always budget for everything if there's a good business case for it. We don't have to just spend X amount, because if you spend X amount, you'll only make X amount, because that was your budget as well.
So true.
So that was one of those. The other key one would have been around culture.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about culture.
The importance of culture, I cannot underestimate that. The old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But it's, strategy's critical, but culture, you're never going to achieve anything as much as you're trying to, unless the team are on board and there's a great culture in an organization.
I agree. Tell me a little bit about that, and let's go a little bit deeper into that, because you have done a lot of M&As, you've had a lot of different, like when you put two cultures together, or you even establish, a new business and you're starting a new culture, it can be like a recipe for, potentially disaster, or you bring in a new staff member and they've got you think they're great on paper, and you meet them and you think everything's great about them and you've got this great culture, and then you bring somebody in and it completely, impacts the culture in not a good way, because you realize, oh, they're toxic or they're causing a bit of chaos in the business. Did you find that you had a lot of those situations throughout your time?
We had many of those situations. But I think the important part about it is that to be able to listen, is one of the most important parts of it, to understand why people think the way they do. And when explaining any new major change in an organization, or wanting to make any change in an organization, explaining the why is also critical. Why are you making the change? Why? What is the purpose of it? And to be able to listen and understand people's feedback. I think that helps a great deal. One of my pet hates, and I hear it quite often, even in businesses I'm involved with today, that people do culture surveys. And my view on a culture survey is that if you've got a bad culture, people are not going to tell you in a survey what they think.
No.
So it just becomes a waste of time and effort. And then once they tell you what they think, if you don't do anything with it, they're never ever going to tell you again.
So true.
Yeah, I was chatting to someone the other day, and in their business, they'd recently done a culture survey. And a lot of the senior people in the organization had decided to, weren't happy with certain elements which were going on, decided to just tell them what they wanted to hear anyway, because what was the point? Because even though it becomes anonymous, people say, well, what's the point? So, and then what's worse than that, I've always felt, is the worst type of employee you can get is a disengaged employee who doesn't leave. And that becomes a major issue.
Yeah, I think when you have a disengaged employee, my biggest lesson is rip the Band-Aid off fast. Don't let that, don't try and, because if they're not going to leave, right? As well, there's two parts to that. And so a lot of the times the advice I give to my clients is you need to rip the Band-Aid off. Obviously there's, being mindful of legalities and everything else. It's not going to change. So you need to make that call very quickly and be decisive in those moments, because the longer you leave it, the worse it gets.
Yeah. But another key area of culture, I think, is around engaging people in decision making, but not being totally democratic. Because the worst I've seen as well, when everyone wants to get everybody involved in every decision, because then no decisions are ever made.
Yeah.
So one's got to be able to hear people, and then make the call.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think those are some of the key elements around culture. I'd say one of the other learnings there, which is Seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how many businesses completely lose sight of it. And this actually should have been the real number one in everything that, I haven't given any priority order in the points that I'm making. The customer has to be at the forefront of everything that you do.
Oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. It's always been the way.
It should be, but you'd be surprised at how many businesses the customer isn't at the forefront.
I see it too. Trust me, my industry that I came out of is advertising, and it's all generally, we're doing it this. Well, not. I should say generally. A lot of the time, it used to be. We'll do it like our way, and it's like no, it doesn't work that way.
Correct. So there's so many elements to that. It's first of all really understanding your customer, and a lot of businesses don't actually understand who their customer is. And if you don't understand who your customer is, how do you create product? How do you market? How do you do anything? And it seems like an absolute basic, but believe me, there are so many businesses out there which do not put the customer at the first thing that they do. And every element, whatever you're doing in the business, the customer needs to be considered.
I agree, absolutely.
And then probably one of the other key ones, and you touched on it earlier, was around authentic leadership. I could probably say, prior to my time as a CEO, in other roles that I've had, I've probably learned more from poor leaders along the way than I have from good leaders. And authentic leadership is something that I firmly believe in. I think it's so much easier for so many reasons. Number one, it's just easier being yourself. And the most simple thing in the world to do is to show up every day and be yourself.
I agree. Yeah.
If you try and be someone you're not, it just doesn't work. Actually, just a story on that one. I was once listening to a podcast, and there was an interview with the swimmer Grant Hackett. And when Grant had retired from swimming, he made the decision. He went onto television as a sports reporter or a sports presenter, and he wasn't very successful at that. Okay, and when he was asked why, he said, because I thought I had to be a sports presenter and act like a sports presenter. And later on, he ended up doing a whole bunch of other things and becoming successful in business, but also realizing that the best thing to do would have been himself, not trying to be a sports presenter.
Absolutely. Because the minute you put that label on yourself, and it kind of takes us through to how do you lead through constant change without losing yourself. The minute you put that, I have to be a sports presenter, for example, on, it makes you're almost distracting yourself from who you truly are. You're disconnecting from yourself because you're like, oh, I've got to be like a sports presenter. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And then you just put all this unnecessary pressure on yourself. And I think that we get this so wrong in business quite often. It's like the whole analogy of, and I say this all the time, that we need to think before we speak. And yet the best way quite often is to speak before you think, because when you speak before you think, it's coming from the conscious, like subconscious. It's authentic. There's a time and a place for thinking before you speak. We're currently speaking before, we're in flow, and I think that that's just such an important form of leadership, being who you truly are and not losing yourself along the way.
And as I said, I've seen so many leaders, both within organizations I'd worked for previously or just outside of organizations with major customers or anything. You'd felt that they dressed up and went to work and tried to portray a role. And that wasn't them. And I think being authentic certainly provides consistency and lets everybody around you know, whether it's, if you're a CEO, whether it's your board members, whether it's some of your direct reports or anyone else in the organization, know what they can expect from you. There should be no surprises. People should understand exactly what type of person you are. As I said, being yourself is the easiest of the lot.
What about though, Eric, like you would have had moments in your, like when you excuse me, when you were a CEO, but you can't be up all the time, right? There's tough moments, you're under a lot of pressure, private equity, or when you're in M&A mode, merger and acquisition mode, or you're bringing two cultures together. Nothing ever goes to plan either. And so you're carrying the world on your shoulders as a CEO. I mean, you need the right leadership team around you because you should be carrying it all. There's moments as a CEO though where you just feel like you're a human. You're having a really vulnerable day. Like you're not feeling your best. Like, what's your advice there? Like, coming right back to authentic leadership, because I know for me there was times when I put on a mask because I knew the way I walked into a room with 150 to 180 staff at times, my energy would filtrate through that organization. So if I wasn't feeling great, everyone would pick up on the vibe. And so they got to a point sometimes where I was like, I've just got to be up. And it was
Yep.
exhausting.
I think there's probably two things there. The first one is be able to create some space for yourself within your working day. And I often used to just put an hour aside as if there was a meeting, and that was time for thinking. Time I can have my door closed without interruptions, and I could just reset. But the other one is also, and I think it's really important, is to be able to have some kind of a mentor. As a CEO, it's a very lonely job.
Yeah.
Okay. And to be able to have some kind of a mentor or a mentorship group to be able to work within. Okay. And to be able to just share ideas, bounce things off people, etc. And I think that kind of helped a great deal as well.
What are you seeing with the younger generation coming through? Like, what are you noticing in your new role? Well, not new role, the role you're in now. And I shouldn't say just younger generation. Like, what are you seeing that is consistent? And then what are you seeing that's like, has leadership got better or has it got worse? I guess is my question.
I think it's different. I think it's a different mindset with regards to it. Certainly some of the younger generation coming through have got some great new ideas, but also some ideas which probably need a little bit more experience. And there's no substitute for experience and, through long periods of learning and understanding. But, if you can take some great new ideas coming through, and that's where, again, diversity is so important within a management team or within a board. Okay, and diversity, in my mind, is diversity across a whole bunch of different things. It's not only gender diversity, diversity in age, in thought process, in different experience levels, and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
one of the points I just wanted to also make, just talking about authentic leadership, and I think one of the most important elements there is really understanding your own strengths and weaknesses and own them. You know what you're good at, but no one's good at everything.
No.
And don't try and be good at everything, because the teams, the boards, anyone else will see straight through you. So own it and say, I'm actually not great at that. But if you own it, you can actually supplement those skill sets around you.
Agreed. I've never been a fan of using the word weaknesses. I've always said, what are you really strong at? And then what do you need to improve on? Or like, in terms of, there's two sides, I should say there's two sides to the coin, because I think weaknesses takes us into quite a negative space in terms of that you're good at this side and you need the other team around you, or the particular people around you, to do the other side. Like, master the strength you're really good at. Don't try and be everything to everybody or do everything. This also comes into pleasing everybody, because, like you say, like, it's a very lonely role at the top. And my uncle said to me when I was very little, I think I was about 10, and he said, and we were talking about being a leader, and he said to me, leadership can be like politics, although God forbid, the politics at the moment, it's quite interesting around the world, including Australia. And
Yes.
he said, you're not going to be liked every day. You're going to be hated some days. You're going to be liked others. It's lonely. And I think that's very true, because quite often you have to make decisions under pressure that are right for the business, and it may not necessarily, the team may not necessarily see that this is the right decision, but it absolutely is the right decision. And they're looking at you going, he's cut costs, or he's done this, or he's done that, or she's done this, she's done that, and don't really see why. Well, I shouldn't say don't really, because you need to explain the why, but sometimes it's a decision that just needs to be made, and then you're taking everyone on the journey. I always find that is something that's really interesting as well, like in terms of, it's not personal, is I guess what I'm saying. There's nothing personal in business. Business is business. And I think the more you can get your head around that as a leader as well, in terms of sometimes there's decisions you have to make, and if you make those decisions in a really authentic way and deliver them in an authentic way, they'll be better understood.
But I think that what you just said there, delivering in an authentic way, a lot is around communication.
Absolutely.
And the worst is when decisions are made in an organisation and people don't understand why.
Mm.
And not everyone's going to have to, and you don't have to justify the decision, but you've got to explain the rationale behind it.
Mm.
And if there's some rationale behind it, if people don't like it, and it's fine, but at least you're explaining why you're doing it.
Absolutely. What about boards, Eric? Like you like CEO to board, non-executive director. What was that transition like for you? Like I'm not on a board. I've obviously been involved with a lot of boards, and I was on a board in my previous role, in the business. I wasn't like an external non-executive, and also chairing of a board. I've had a few clients where I've gone to the board meetings, and I've actually had an experience once when I was in a board meeting, and we were pitching for a client, the client, and we're presenting to the board, and it was quite literally blowing up in front of us. Like, it was out of control. I can't even, like, it was like, whoa, what is going on here? It was so rogue. Like, I read this book a while ago, and I wish I could remember the title that they were talking about that boards need in a board. And it was something around critical, and it wasn't critical decision. And it was just and I was like, oh my God, that is so true, because you can go into boards and sometimes it's like cowboy and cowgirl material going on. And then other times, and you're smiling, and then other times it's a really legitimate board. And I'm like from a leadership and authentic leadership, there's it's not completely different. Like, what's it like from a board perspective versus a CEO, and especially as a chair, because you have all these, I guess, like very senior leaders. There's a lot of ego as well that's playing out quite often.
That's correct. Look, I think, again, it's a little bit like my kind of my management and executive career, where you learn from different things. And, having sat on our own internal board for 18 years, I kind of formed in my mind what I would want to do when I moved into any non-executive roles. And the most important thing that I always thought was I wanted to be able to make a contribution. I never wanted anyone to, after a board meeting, think, well, I was underprepared. I didn't read the board pack. I didn't ask any decent questions. And you never want to be the person who just collects their paycheck at the end of the month and looks for the next board role. So, but again, whilst I'm saying that, I think the important part about that one is that you never want to try and do the job of the CEO.
No.
Okay, so the CEO needs the space, needs that. But sometimes if it's a relatively new CEO, they need a lot of guidance and mentoring. And that's, I think, also part of particularly a chair or a board role. Okay. So there's a fine line between the two. But again, it's about having the right people around the board table. Okay. And it's no use having around the board table 4 accountants and 2 lawyers. Okay, so you all got the same mindset, you all want to do the same thing. So having different thought processes and be able to gel, and I always look at it like a sports team, so to speak. You're never going to go into a game, and we'll talk about soccer because the Soccer World Cup's on at the moment. Yeah. You won't go into a game with 4 goalkeepers on the field. Okay, you always want to have a goalkeeper and a striker and a midfield, and etc., etc. So it's the same thing around the board. It's the same thing in a senior leadership team. You need different skill sets. You need different personalities. And, same as an orchestra, you need someone to conduct the orchestra, and you need various different instrument players.
Yeah,
so it's about all those things coming together. And I think there are still far too many boards that I see, not necessarily that I'm involved with, but which are very structured and old thought process.
Yes.
Okay.
It's such a good point, because I'll go in and I'm like, what is going on? Like, this just needs to be shaken up. This needs to change. Yeah.
And I think the important thing there, B, is that I think for a board member to have done it before themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lived
So
experience.
if you're on a board of a advertising agency, you should have become from an advertising agency and have knowledge. Not every member of the board, but certainly people should have knowledge of a business. How many boards do you see where there is no induction in an organization, where they don't really understand the mechanics of a business and how it works? So we're all going to a board meeting once a month, but you've got to understand what you're trying to do. What are the key issues facing the business? It could be industry, it could be external, it could be internal, whatever. And I think those are the important parts about it.
Absolutely. A couple of final questions for you, Eric. Like, in terms of failure,
Yes.
what's been like your biggest lessons from failure in terms of, I'm sure you've had some along the way as a CEO, and it's hard as a CEO as well, because like you say, it's very lonely, and you come away and you're like, oh, and you're very hard on yourself, and some things are out of your control, like coming back to constant change and navigating through complexity, the unknown. Like, sometimes I've had failures where it's just like, I thought everything was in place for it to be successful, and a curveball came from nowhere, and just, COVID was one good example. Like, one minute we were at the top of, we were running at 20 million revenue, we were flying and going to keep going, and the next thing I know, we've dropped down to 11 million.
Yep.
And failure still came in for me, because it's like, but it was way out of my control.
Well, I think failure, whoever can sit back and certainly through a long career say, well, I haven't made bad decisions or I haven't made mistakes. I mean, we all make many mistakes along the way. As I always used to say to my team, you're allowed to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you're probably not stretching to the limits on anything. But, there's been many. I think probably the biggest ones I've made are around people. And initially giving people too long a time thinking that they're going to be able to come good at some point in time, and not taking the decisions quickly enough. Again, as I've kind of said earlier, some of the mistakes I've made, even when we bought a business once, which was a phenomenal business, and it had a niche, but I left it exactly as it was because it was so good. Okay. And we didn't transform it quick enough, and everyone started copying it. And then, so you learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
But, I think if you had to look back on it, some of the biggest frustrations one ever has, what are some of the biggest challenges generally around people?
Yeah, they are. It's the hardest part it's the hardest part of your role. I say that all the time to leaders. It is the hardest part, and I think that comes right back to authenticity, and really understanding the team, yourself, your leadership team, who they really are from the inside out, and like what makes them tick. I think it comes really back to what makes them tick, and so that you can. It's a psychological game in a way, like understanding them psychologically, so that you can then work with them in a way, or lead them in a way that gets them to, like, it's a relationship. It comes down to a relationship, and I think it's a fine art. It's not just everyone is the same, and I think that's why I think it's so important to be leading for your people, understanding your traits, their traits, how they all interconnect, all of that.
But with mistakes as well, I think I'd always say address it, don't justify it.
Mm.
And the amount of times people try and justify things instead of addressing it. And
Yeah.
that they justify it because it may be bad for the ego and they don't want to own up to it being a problem. So don't do that. Just address it.
Yeah, I agree. And what would be your final piece of advice, Eric, to the listeners right now in terms of if we pull it right back to your authentic leadership, what would be your piece of advice? Like if we think about the world we're in right now, there is emerging complexity every day. There is so much uncertainty, so much unknown. It's almost like there's a lot of like you look at the media landscape, like there's so many shifts taking place. Like someone said to me the other day, we've gone from frozen and we're in this unfrozen state, or I call it the formless, and where the water's being poured in all these different crevices and shapes, and we're not necessarily in that new shape or form just yet. And here we are as leaders working our way through that. What would be your piece of advice in terms of coming from an authentic place?
Okay. I'd say be confident.
Mm.
Okay. Because there's nothing worse than a leader which is panicking.
Mm.
And again,
Okay.
I love using analogies, but could you imagine a general going into a battle zone with all his senior ranked officers and he's panicking? Okay, don't panic. Okay,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of challenges, these geopolitical challenges, these different economical challenges, all of those elements. You've got your own internal challenges within the business. Just be confident, have a strategy, and stick to the strategy. Okay, when I say stick to the strategy, for a point in time until you realize that it actually might not be the right one, and then you can pivot. Okay, but you've got to be confident and you've got to have a strategy.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Eric, thank you so much. I've loved all your points and all your, I guess, lessons and experience that you've shared with us. Hey, are you writing a book? Have you written a book yet?
My wife always tells me I've got a few books in me, and the answer is no. Strange enough, don't have the interest to do it.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, they're full of stories after all so many years.
Yeah, it might not be in the form of a book, but like Eric's lessons or Eric's, because you've got like if you even just list them out, like the way you've shared them, it's just so simple to understand. Like I think it's there's something there. I feel like there is anyway. That's just my perspective listening
Well,
to you.
thank you.
No, thank you, Eric. How do we find out more about you? For like again, for your experience, your lessons, where would we go to find you?
On LinkedIn's probably the easiest. So yeah, LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to engage. Probably a little bit of an old-fashioned way to do things. I like talking to people as opposed to doing everything by email or by
Same.
text or anything else.
I
In
said that
fact, I
stuff
probably
last
was well
night.
known in my executive days. If people would text me, I'd phone them.
Yeah, I love that. I'm the same. I did that last night. I have this person that's been messaging me on LinkedIn. I'm like, seriously. I just said, here's my booking link if you want to chat. I'm not going to go back and forth on. It takes so much time. Let's just chat. Let's just talk. What are you hiding behind?
So, I can be contacted on LinkedIn. If there's a mutual interest from both parties to discuss anything, I'll give you my email, I'll give you my telephone number, and we'll have a chat.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing, Eric. Thank you so much. Well, I've got your LinkedIn link, so I'll put that in the show notes. And Eric, thank you so much for your time this morning.
My
Enjoy
pleasure.
your Friday, and
Thank you.
have a wonderful weekend. And thank you.
And you too. Thanks, B.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.